Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar, How SD-WAN Ensures Reliability and Quality for Your SaaS Applications, sponsored by Citrix Systems. Before we begin, I wanted to cover a few housekeeping items. On the right-hand side of your screen is the Q&A. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can type your question into the Q&A box and submit your questions to our speakers. All questions will be saved, so if we don't get to answer you, we may follow up via email. At the bottom of your audience console are multiple application widgets you can use. If you have any technical difficulties, please click on the yellow Help widget. Here you can find answers to common questions. A copy of today's slide deck is available for download in the green resource list widget. Towards the end of today's presentation, we'll ask for your feedback. Our survey will pop open on your screen and will only take 1 minute to complete. Your feedback is extremely helpful. An on-demand version of the webcast will be available about 1 day after the event and can be accessed using the same audience link that was sent to you earlier today. I would now like to turn the event over to Enterprise Cloud News' editor, Scott Ferguson. Scott?
Thank you, Kate. And may I say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where in the world you find yourself today. My name is Scott Ferguson, and I'm one of the 2 editors of Enterprise Cloud News, a light reading publication. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar and taking time out of your busy schedule to learn more about today's topic, which is how does SD-WAN ensure reliability and quality for your SaaS applications. To help us learn a little bit more about SD-WAN and SaaS and how these 2 technologies are converging in the multi-cloud world, I'm joined by Carl Brown, the Senior Director of Product Management in NetScaler SD-WAN at Citrix. I'm going to let Carl introduce himself to everyone in our audience in just a few minutes. However, at this time, I do want to remind everyone that this is an interactive webinar that we're having today, and your participation and your questions, as well as your feedback, mean a very good deal to us. Please send us your thoughts and questions during our talk, and Carl and I will do our best to get them answered. Now, let's talk about SD-WAN, SaaS, and what these 2 technologies mean to enterprise IT. So we'll start by what do we mean by SD-WAN. SD-WAN remains a relatively new technology in the enterprise market. However, it is in growing importance to IT. So what do we actually mean by SD-WAN? Well, we looked at what Gartner had to say to kind of get an industry standard about what we mean by this technology. So let's see how Gartner defines it for us. SD-WAN solutions provide a replacement for traditional WAN routers and are agnostic to WAN transport technologies. SD-WAN provides dynamic, policy-based application path selection across multiple WAN connections and supports service channels for additional services such as WAN optimization and firewalls. How fast is actually SD-WAN growing? A lot of that depends on which analysis you want to follow that's out there in the marketplace. So for instance, IDC, another industry standard that we follow, they recently predicted that the SD-WAN market will reach over $8 billion in market revenue by 2021. Now, if you're like me, you see a lot of these market forecasts, and I've also seen that the SD-WAN market could actually reach maybe $1 billion, so a little bit less than what IDC is predicting. But there is one thing that all these market predictions do show. SD-WAN is growing, and it's going to become more and more important to IT in the future. So what's driving SD-WAN growth right now? The IDC forecast offers some insight into what's driving the adoption, into what's driving SD-WAN in the enterprise. The first is digital transformation, and that is a somewhat ambiguous term, but what can we mean by that? Well, it means that there is a desire by enterprises to go totally digital. And by doing so, they hope to disrupt their markets before they are disrupted by more nimble startups. So you can think about the Airbnbs and Ubers of the world as the disruptors, and the traditional companies are looking to get their digital transformation under the way right now so they're not left behind. However, and this is very important for today's webcast, cloud is driving also a lot of SD-WAN growth, and specifically it is SaaS that is driving that. And why is that? Well, let's turn back to our friends at IDC again, and they're going to tell us a little bit by this. And this is from the same forecast, and this is what they're saying about the SaaS market. The increase in SaaS adoption for business applications throughout the enterprise disrupts the prominence of MBLS-based WAN connectivity to the branch. So this is a newer technology, and it's looking to replace some older infrastructure that's out there. We also wanted to talk a little bit about service providers in SD-WAN, and that's sort of the flip side of that. And I found some interesting information that came from one of our sister publications, Heavy Reading. And they had a report that came out in October that found the majority of service providers believe that SD-WAN is important to their portfolio, although increased revenue hasn't followed just yet. Again, this is a newer technology. It's just getting into the marketplace, so that revenue is going to be following at some point. The study also found that about 60% of service providers have already deployed SD-WAN, and that's very important. We're going to hold on to that for a little bit later. Finally, the Heavy Reading folks also found out that 40% of service providers believe that SD-WAN will account for between 10 to 20% of their company's revenues once the technology is fully deployed. And again, as a reminder, we're still in the early stages of SD-WAN. So these numbers will increase as we go back to those IDC and some other predictions that we've seen getting us to that billion-dollar inflection point in just the next few years. Now, let's take a look at the SaaS market, because this is also very important to today's webcast. Carl is going to be talking a lot about this in just a few minutes. So right now, infrastructure as a service is getting a lot of attention. And as mostly everybody knows, this is because of the rise of these huge giants in this market, public cloud platforms. These are your Amazon Web Services, this is Microsoft Azure, as well as the Google Cloud Platform, plus a lot of other big players that you'll know by name in this market. But we have to remember that SaaS is going too. And actually, a lot of folks, when they think about cloud, they're thinking about SaaS because these are how applications are being delivered to them every day, no longer from the on-premise model. And we know that a recent estimate from Synergy Research Group, again, another group that does pretty good market research, has SaaS growing at a 31% compound annual growth rate between 2016 and 2017. So in the last year, it's grown by 31%. And so what does this mean in terms of financials? Well, Jefferies offered an interesting look at the market in the third quarter of 2017. And that SaaS grew to and totaled $33.5 billion in revenue just in that third quarter alone. Now, as I said, we talk a lot about infrastructure as a service, and if you look at those same numbers that Jefferies offered, infrastructure as a service plus platform as a service totaled $35 billion during that same third quarter time period. So we can see there that even though SaaS is kind of losing a little bit of its market cachet to Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, it's still a major, major part of the cloud market and is really part of the growth of cloud. So with that, we are going to be turning towards our first poll question of the day, which asks a little bit about SaaS and how much SaaS that you use. And our first choice is that you have 0 SaaS applications. The second choice is between 1 and 5 SaaS applications in your enterprise. The third is between 5 and 10 SaaS applications. Fourth choice is more than 10. And at fifth is those who are really ahead in the SaaS market, and that's more than 25 SaaS applications that are going on right now. And as we give everybody in our audience a chance to answer our first poll question, I'm going to let Carl introduce himself and tell us a little bit about what he does at Citrix and his expertise in the marketplace. And so with that, Carl, as some of our poll questions are being answered, why don't you take a few minutes and introduce yourself to our audience today.
Thanks, Scott. For everyone's benefit, my name is Carl Brown. I'm the Senior Director of Product Management here at Citrix Systems. Within the product management big team here at Citrix, but my specific remit is to look at our SD-WAN offering for service providers and to work with them as well as our traditional partner community to ensure that we have the right feature functionality for them, both for their near-term needs as it relates to SD-WAN, but also for their needs as they look to increase the use of cloud services as well as SaaS services which many of them, that's the direction that they're headed. So I've been here about 5 years and really enjoy working within the SD-WAN space. It's changing very rapidly and lots of interesting things going on. So without boring anybody anymore, Scott, I'll turn it back over to you, and perhaps we have those poll results that you can talk about.
Well, Carl, it's never boring talking to you. So we always have that going for us. No worries there. But yes, let's take a look at the poll question, our first one of the day. And after that, we're going to let Carl talk and give us some of his insights into SaaS and the SD-WAN market. So I seem to be having a little bit of difficulty looking at the slides right now, and we do apologize for that. Oh, here we are. It bounced back to me, one reverse slide. So let me just give you folks a quick rundown, and I apologize if the order was a little bit off. And then how many SaaS applications is your enterprise using? Vast majority say between 1 and 5, so that's kind of what I suspected would be what most folks would say. That seems to kind of show that it not only is SaaS there, but you're using a couple different applications on each day. A few folks said actually between 5 and 10, about 20% of our listeners today say between 5 and 10. And actually there's also 20% that said you had more than 25, so really adopting SaaS at a pretty good rate. Interesting enough that zero actually said that they're 0% said they have none. So most of our folks are dealing with at least one or more SaaS applications within their enterprise. So that's our poll question for right now. We have one more in the middle of our presentation that's coming up. But with that, I'm going to take a break, and I'm going to let Carl go over his part of the presentation, and I'll be joining back a little bit later. Carl?
Okay, thanks, Scott. All right, so the poll results indicate that many of you are already using SaaS applications and probably along with that public cloud services. The reason is not because cloud services and SaaS are cool new technologies, but rather they help with you as within enterprise IT achieve the goals of accommodating new and exciting applications and delivering them to your customers within your organization, providing agility, the ability to migrate from one application to the next to meet business needs, ensure that those applications reside and are delivered in optimized environments. Some of the applications might not be suited for the technologies that have been deployed in your data centers, or to protect against technical or vendor lock-in is another reason why many people often choose SaaS and cloud services. But to have a larger sample size, we worked with IDC last year to put our fingers on the state of the SaaS and cloud market. And according to the IDC research, almost 3/4 of organizations are working in a mix of public and private clouds, as well as traditional on-prem data centers. At the same time, more than 3/4 of the respondents believe that network infrastructure is a blocker to migrating to SaaS and cloud services. It increases the complexity of the network. So the takeaway from these two factoids is not only do you have one, but rather many application vendors to work with as you move from traditional applications. And in addition to this, you have to deliver these applications from external clouds or public clouds, as well as any internal clouds that have been developed using that technology in the data center. The internet as well is another source for those applications. So what does this mean? And just flipping on to the next slide, this means that SaaS and cloud architectures are going to cause challenges for application delivery because of what I mentioned on the previous slide. So let me add some color to the bullets that you see on the slide and the viewer panel. So with the advent of multi-cloud and SaaS, the things to stay on top of are, one is the end user experience. The success of an application and the rollout of an application is going to be driven in large part by having end users who feel like the performance of the application meets their needs. Having a line of visibility into the application environment to be able to predict the effects of the increased use of this application and being prepared to respond to the problems is a key to winning with the migration to SaaS. A piecemeal approach to application delivery or trying to use the different, going to different elements in the application delivery to understand where problems occur can make troubleshooting quite difficult. And finally, security. By moving to SaaS and public cloud, you're opening up that surface attack surface, and the correct strategy, having a good strategy to minimize risks as opposed to increase them is also a key challenge that you need to think about. But why are these key challenges cropping up from moving to SaaS? And that's what I want to briefly talk about on this slide is one, it's because apps will exist in multiple clouds and data will exist outside the enterprise perimeter. Apps will be flowing, app flows will be moving in multiple unpredicted ways, which causes a challenge in understanding the performance or providing consistent performance. Users expect to connect from anywhere. Users expect to connect from any device. I have my iPhone with me. It's convenient for me to check. I want to use that now. I'm at home. I want to use my laptop. But they want, regardless of what they're using, they want the connection process to be simple, and they need continuous access to make a little bit of progress when they have a little bit of time throughout the day or to be really productive when they're sitting in their office. And for those of you in the IT who have to think about things from an IT perspective, you need to secure those users from where they are. You need to secure the data to prevent leaks. At the same time, you have budgets that you have to live within. You have to prevent outages to ensure that your business can run even in the face of network issues. And that drives a lot of technical challenges. And so SD-WAN is a way to address many of those challenges. And why is that? SD-WAN solutions embed the ability to identify issues or outages in the wide area network and to route around those and to mask the problems within the network from the user so that they just see a reliable, consistent experience. SD-WAN solutions can be used to provide more bandwidth for particular applications. Broadband internet access, cable modem services, LTE services from a megabit per second standpoint are far cheaper than traditional MPLS or Metro Ethernet services. And by leveraging additional bandwidth and moving applications from one network service to another network service or spreading the application across two network services can deliver more bandwidth to support new and rich media applications. And this is something that is hard to solve with traditional routing technologies, but can be solved by an intelligent SD-WAN solution. SD-WAN solutions can provide insight into the SaaS delivery. Because they're measuring the performance of those network connections, they can visualize that data to you and tell you for a particular application what is the delay or what are the network issues that are impacting its delivery. And you can use that information to understand the trouble and begin the troubleshooting process. They can also improve productivity by finding the optimal route between the user and the SaaS application. As we indicated, users are going to be moving around from work at the branch office or at home, and the application itself could be moving. SaaS providers oftentimes will spin up additional resources in different locations as their demands change throughout the day. And the SaaS solution, intelligent SaaS solution, can understand all that and properly route the traffic from that user to the best location for the application delivery. So let's turn to the more technical and begin to address how it does all these wonderful things that I just talked about. First, SD-WAN solutions enable direct internet breakout. Why should traffic that's destined for the internet be backhauled through the data center for then to be routed onto the internet to reach its intended destination? And a good SaaS solution allows you to take advantage of that internet connection that's coming into that branch location and send internet destined traffic directly from the branch to that location. It also will include a firewall, because now we have internet access coming into the branch. We need to prevent intrusions at the branch location, and by integrating a firewall into that, we provide a solution for that. But at the same time, many enterprises want to have visibility into what's going on in that internet access. And so SaaS solutions today can optionally direct traffic to a secure web gateway service to understand and to prevent, to track usage and prevent malware and do sandboxing and other functions like that. Okay, so an intelligent SD-WAN solution can use deep packet inspection technologies to identify SaaS applications at the first connection and intelligently steer that traffic. Should it go back to the data center? Since it's SaaS, no. Should it go out over the internet path? Perhaps. Should it be routed to a secure web gateway? Maybe not necessarily. But being able to identify that this is a trusted SaaS application and steer it differently from other web traffic is important. You can also use this a SaaS SD-WAN solution to identify and block some users from accessing it based upon who they are and where they're trying to access from. And you can use policies to direct traffic to the data center or secure web gateway if you wish, if you want that additional security, but an intelligent SD-WAN solution gives you the ability to treat SaaS applications differently. In addition, the future of SD-WAN is to look deeper into the internet and to select the best path as it exits the branch and goes to that SaaS location. What's the best way to access the content from that SaaS application? Is it from a CDN or is it from a different location in the internet is important. And SD-WAN solutions also enable public cloud access, enable you to create reliable connections directly to Amazon Web Services or Azure from either the branch or the data center. And you can use that connection to bring the branch closer to where the application is being delivered, closer from a latency perspective. And at the same time, you can gain visibility into that connection from the branch, from the data center, into that cloud platform. Or you can use that to connect to a co-location provider such as Equinix, which oftentimes these co-location providers provide high-speed, low-latency connections to a variety of cloud providers or a variety of SaaS providers. And you still get the benefit of that visibility into the co-location provider from the branch to understand that leg of the application delivery. So at this point, I want to pause and turn it back over to Scott to see, for our next poll and before we head to the takeaways. Scott?
Thanks, Carl. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much for that. And as Carl said, we are going to have some key takeaways from his presentation coming up in just a minute, but we do want to ask you one more poll question before the end of our presentation today. And today, the other poll question we want to talk about is, what do you do with your SaaS application traffic? So our choices are backhaul it through the data center for security, send it from the branch to a secure web gateway, send it from the branch directly to the SaaS application, or modify the path based on the specific user or SaaS application. So do you want of you folks to tell us a little bit about how you're actually moving your SaaS applications around the network? And Carl, when folks are taking a few minutes out of today's presentation to take our poll question and give us their thoughts, I have a quick question for you, and maybe you could help explain this a little bit. So if I'm an enterprise or some other type of, maybe a smaller business or something like that, and my service provider is offering some type of SD-WAN solution or technology that I could use, how is that different from what you as Citrix offer as far as these technologies go? Where's kind of the differentiation there?
Okay, great question. So enterprises today, as it relates to SD-WAN, some want to do it themselves. You can't see me doing air quotes when I say do it themselves, but what that means is they identify the best solution, they select and deploy that solution, and they configure it and manage it on an ongoing basis. That meets the needs of some customers, and Citrix can support those customers who want to do it themselves. Some customers see the transition to SD-WAN as a challenge or is a big change, and they want help in that change, and they want to leverage the expertise of a provider that has done this before. In the realm of providers, they can choose someone who has a lot of flexibility to source a particular solution and combine it with different management capabilities or even different WAN services that they can bundle in. Or there's the option of using a pretty standard offering from a traditional telco in terms of and using a more established service or refined service as they migrate. Regardless of what works best for an enterprise, they typically have a lot of choice in which SD-WAN solution that they use, especially if they're not doing it do-it-yourself. They have a lot of flexibility in determining with their service provider what is the best solution, the best vendor solution for the equipment that they use in their SD-WAN solution. So does that perhaps that asks some or begs some more question from the audience? I don't know, but that's my viewpoint in the world on that matter.
It actually kind of begs me to ask like one kind of follow-up question to that. Well, we're letting folks go through the poll right now. Is in terms of the size of the enterprise, is there a certain size of enterprise that's asking for help to do this? Because we know the biggest of the big enterprises, they could bring in the talent that they need. So when you're out there and you're talking to customers, is there a particular size of enterprise that mostly comes up to you to ask about these solutions? Is it a mid-market play? Is it the smaller part of the enterprise? Like, where do you kind of see folks coming to you to kind of get some of this information? See, yes, I want to do SD-WAN, but I need some help from you or the service provider or from that third party.
Yeah, so I think that's a good question. So certainly the larger enterprises have unique needs. They have larger resources and a larger bench strength of experts in different areas. They tend to do it themselves. On the other end of the spectrum are the small businesses, which tend to, we don't see a lot of, they're probably going directly to service providers and using a standard offering from a service provider. But the vast majority in the middle, the medium-sized businesses, they run the gamut from they have unique needs, they have talented individuals, they do it themselves, or they maybe instead of going through a traditional service provider that has a set offering, they go to what I would call a managed service provider or a system integrator, which provides them with a lot of flexibility, the flexibility to choose what they want managed, what services they need, and also choice in what is the right vendor technology that they want the service provider to use when building out the managed SD-WAN service. So maybe to summarize that, the big guys, the large enterprise, tend to do it themselves. The small guys tend to buy a standard service, but the medium enterprise is where there's a mix, and within and there's a lot of differences from one medium enterprise to the next.
Yeah, a lot of variety in there, and it depends on your talent pool and what your specific needs are, and how many SaaS applications you're running, what your infrastructure looks like. Are you a newer business, an older business? How does everything fit in there? Well, that's great, Carl. Thank you for that. We really appreciate your insight on that. And we're going to give the results of our poll question right now, and we'll let Carl take a very, very small break, and then he's going to pick up on talking a little bit about the rest of his presentation for today. So as a reminder, we asked, what do you do now with your SaaS application traffic? And the majority of our readers, 31%, actually gave two different types of answers. The first was send it from the branch to a secure web gateway. Again, that was 31% of the folks that were polled in our readers. And then the other one, also 31%, send it from the branch directly to the SaaS application. So there's a nice healthy split between those two different types of methods for sending your traffic around the network. The other one that proved pretty popular was modify the path based on specific user or SaaS application. And bringing up the rear at just 17%, we had backhaul it through the data center for security. And we do have some security questions for Carl that'll be coming up in the second part of the presentation. But for now, we're going to turn it back over to Carl. He's going to finish up, and we're going to start the Q&A after that. So Carl, back over to you.
Sure. Okay, so from a takeaway perspective, hopefully we've convinced you that application access is a continuum. Applications are in some cases, some customers I talk to, they still have some servers in their branch for users there, but applications have moved, they're in a traditional data center, they're in the cloud, they've been outsourced as a SaaS service, and then there's those other applications that are being consumed from the internet that IT might not even know about. And you can't treat any one of these application locations, including SaaS, as a separate network problem going forward. Otherwise, you're just going to get into more and more complexity in the network. So SD-WAN can help address application delivery regardless of where that application is delivered from. That's one of the benefits of an SD-WAN solution. But double-clicking into SaaS, not all SaaS is the same and not all users are the same. An intelligent SD-WAN solution understands the SaaS applications through the use of deep packet inspection technologies. It also understands who the user is and what their endpoint is and provides contextual decisions on how to direct that traffic. SaaS isn't a singular destination. Access you can't drop off on the internet edge. SD-WAN should understand not just the best path to reach content, but the best destination or handoff point to that content to ensure the best performance. And let me give you a few examples, switching from SaaS and SD-WAN in general to some of the success that Citrix has had helping customers move to the cloud. One is Ryman Healthcare. They provide senior living communities in Australia and New Zealand, and they wanted to move their patient records to an Azure cloud. Their network wasn't designed for that, and what ultimately they decided works best for them was to bond together an express route to Azure with traditional broadband services. And they selected the Citrix SD-WAN solution to provide that reliable connection back from the communities back to the medical records in Azure. And the Citrix SD-WAN solution ensured them business continuity, lower costs, and the agility going forward. And you can see the quote there from the customer. But they're not an outlier. Another great example is LeasePlan. LeasePlan provides fleet leasing services to enterprises. They're headquartered in Europe. They're one of the world's largest providers of fleet management services. And they do this around the world, even though that they're headquartered in EMEA. And they wanted to lower the cost of application delivery because trying to get international MPLS services can be time-consuming and expensive. But in addition to that, it was really about providing reliability for that leasing application that they deliver from their data centers located in Europe. They selected the Citrix SD-WAN solution because we could demonstrate improved application quality for their leasing application, which is delivered in a virtualized manner. And delivering a virtualized application to a location in Australia from a data center in Europe can be tricky. And Citrix SD-WAN app solution is designed to also take into consideration the needs of virtualized applications. Given that that's part of one of the Zen app and Zen desktop needs, and we're part of that portfolio here at Citrix. At the same time, we support their long-term migration to the cloud. They're already using a secure web gateway service and being able to identify the applications that need to go to the internet and route those to a secure web gateway made sense for them. So just a couple examples of one of the large number of customers that we have with the Citrix SD-WAN solution. But these two highlight specifically how we've helped them reach their goal of using more SaaS, but reducing the complexity in the delivery of that application as they migrate to SaaS. And so with that, I'm done talking, and I'm ready to take some questions. Scott?
Well, thank you very much, Carl. Not done talking just yet. We need to ask you. We need to ask you some questions based on everything that we heard today. So you're not off the hook just yet. And
Gotcha.
We're going to wait a few minutes. Let some of the questions kind of come in. But I had a couple thoughts listening to what you had to say today, coupled with some of the work I've done, or a little bit of the research I've done around SaaS and SD-WAN. And I guess maybe the first thing where we want to start is to talk a little bit about, your experiences with Citrix. And, if you talk about Express Route or Direct Connect, how does that come into play when you're connecting with SaaS? Or do they even kind of come into play at all, or is it sort of a different beast there?
It's a great question. So Direct Connect services or Express Routes have a lot of value they help provide that high-speed, consistent, reliable connection back into AWS and Azure. Of course, there's a price point associated with having an Express Route and a Direct Connect, right? In addition to the bandwidth connectivity that they are layered on top of. And so in many instances, they can provide value for those enterprises that are backhauling applications from the branch into the data center. They can share that Express Route or Direct Connect into AWS or Azure where applications might be located. From there, they can maybe get to a SaaS application as well. But it might not be the right economical choice for those enterprises that have made the decision that they want to allow direct access to a SaaS application from the branch. Arranging from an Express Route to all your different branch locations adds some additional complexity as well as additional costs. That might have value to certain enterprises. It might not have value to others. But being able to provide enterprises the choice of sending an application out directly at the branch or sending an application back to the data center to leverage that Express Route is really what we're focused on with our solution, as opposed to determining what technology or what WAN service is the right one to use.
And that's interesting. And you said something there that kind of leads me to another question. And we kind of talked a little bit about this when we took the first break, but let's see if we can maybe bring it out a little bit. We talked about which kind of an enterprise looks for this, but when we're breaking down the market, and you gave two really good examples there of customers that you've dealt with, is there a particular vertical within the larger enterprise world that we live in that are particularly interested in, these type of SD-WAN solutions to deliver their SaaS applications? You mentioned healthcare. I'm going to assume banking and finance are in there, but in your experience, when you're talking to customers and you're out there in the field, who exactly is interested? What vertical kind of is gravitating towards this type of technology that kind of help them out with their business?
Well, certainly healthcare is one where we see a lot of interest. Migrating up to electronic medical records and all, that's a daunting task for many healthcare providers, especially ones that don't provide critical care, but more health maintenance and things like that. Yes, another one that you highlighted that we have a lot of discussions with are the banking and financial services and insurance. They have been a little bit slower to migrate to SaaS, but they certainly are moving in the direction of taking advantage of the clouds or private clouds or virtual private clouds to augment their traditional data center. But beyond those two, the next two verticals that we see a lot of interest. One is manufacturing. Having because they're using centralized applications to help them control the production process, and to update inventories and to track ERP systems or update them. They have a lot of interest in SD-WAN. And another one where we see a lot of interest is in retail. Retail, want to provide a more immersive experience and to provide information to a user right there in their location to help them visualize how a product might look in their own home, how to visualize how this product might help them. If the store is out, how do I get the customer that's there to the next best possible retail outlet to buy that, and making that information or those applications available to a user or a guest in the retail location is driving bandwidth requirements. It's driving the needs to adopt new applications, and therefore it's driving the interest in using SD-WAN technology to help them as part of that rethink of the entire retail experience. So to add to the two that you identified, I would answer manufacturing and retail are other great verticals where we have lots of conversations.
And again, that goes back to what we talked a little bit about at the beginning of our conversation when I was going through some of those IDC numbers, especially with retail, because that's that digital transformation part of it. That's kind of getting your business ready for the next kind of great wave and having the technology in place in order to support that, make the customer feel more immersed, as you said, delight your customers. I think that's what a lot of CIOs always talk about delighting your customers and offering them something that they can't get elsewhere. And you kind of need to kind of keep up with the technology in order to provide those type of services. When you also talk about SD-WAN and SaaS and cloud and how these are all kind of coming together, when you're talking to your customers and you're out there in the marketplace, what exactly are they using it for? Are they trying to save money in the long term? Are they trying to kind of be digital transformation pioneers where they're going to be out there and kind of get ahead of their competition? Or is there something else that's kind of driving these conversations beyond either cost cutting or cost reduction or the ultimate investment in what our future is going to be? Is there something in between those two, or is that what you're kind of hearing over and over again?
Yeah, I would say originally SD-WAN promised huge cost savings, and it can certainly provide the avoidance of cost increases. It can certainly help with reducing bandwidth costs, but there's other ways to accomplish that without implementing SD-WAN. But what SD-WAN, in addition to providing the ability to avoid costs or to reduce costs, provides is reliability and consistency in the application performance. By selecting the best path, by moving applications from one path and one WAN service to another as underlying networks occur, and they do occur throughout the day, it provides, it ensures that business can continue and business is not impacted in the face of network issues. And other solutions, other options that they have, while they might be able to provide the cost reductions, don't provide that reliability and consistency and application delivery. And so that's really driven a lot of investigation into SD-WAN is because of that. But it's not enough to save money. It's not enough to provide that reliability. It's an SD-WAN solution, and what gets a customer to move is when they begin to see how it enables them to meet their application requirements today, but provides them the agility to rapidly add new applications tomorrow. Because it is a big change in implementing that. They want a platform for the future as opposed to solving a problem that they have today and a budget constraint that they have today. Does that hopefully that makes sense? But we can continue to dialogue on that if needed.
No, that actually does, but when we also talk about it too, because we also talked about it in the context of multi-cloud. And as you said, you talked about some examples there with Microsoft Azure, and I know Microsoft is a huge partner of Citrix, but we also have Amazon and we have Google, and we have other players in there. And then if we bring SaaS in there, folks talk about how Salesforce or Workday or even Oracle is part of that cloud conversation, that multi-cloud universe that we're building, because everybody's delivering everything through the cloud, whether it's platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, software as a service. So does SD-WAN help sort of in the management of all that? Because cloud was supposed to be one of these things where we're supposed to ease everything, make everything a little bit more to get a better handle on things. And now we've kind of gone to cloud sprawl, where we have multiple clouds, different vendors kind of coming in to get those to get those applications that you need or the infrastructure that you need. So does SD-WAN come into the conversation when we talk about multi-cloud management and how you can kind of get a better handle on using these different cloud services that you might have in order to deliver the applications that you need, whether it's to your employees or to your customers?
Absolutely. So enterprises want a solution, an SD-WAN solution that gives them flexibility to choose from different cloud providers or make the choice between developing their own application or using a SaaS application. And it gives them the ability to ensure no matter where the application is delivered from, or what is the application technology, that the application can be identified, it can be prioritized against other applications, it can be delivered reliably and consistently, and they have metrics to understand the quality of experience of the users consuming that application, and they can do that regardless of where it's delivered from, the traditional data center, Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, one of the other cloud providers. They're not locked in to an application strategy based upon the network that they've rolled out. And SD-WAN gives them the degrees of freedom from using the different cloud providers or making the decision to outsource. A good SD-WAN solution will provide that to them.
Interesting. And you also said something too as part of your presentation that got me interested, because I know this is top of the mind for a lot of the folks that I talk to, and I'm gonna mention it, and I think it's gonna be top of the mind for you as well. When we're talking about SD-WAN and delivering, applications or data from one side to the other, and what we have, and when you mentioned EMA, this is kind of what got me to perk up a little bit. We have GDPR coming up in the European Union, and all sorts of new rules around data privacy and security and data breaches, and obviously fines that are coming with this to sort of make this all work. When you're talking SD-WAN and you're having these conversations, are folks starting to talk a little bit about the GDPR part of it, and when they're sending data from one side to another, if they're crossing boundaries, or if they have to think about how that data or that application is running in order to meet these regulations that are kind of coming from the European Union? And my understanding too is other countries, China specifically, are also looking at these sort of regulations. So how does that security, privacy, data leakage part of it kind of come into those conversations that you're having out in the marketplace?
First of all, their GDPR is a complex issue that really it goes beyond SD-WAN. But SD-WAN, which is why we talked earlier in the presentation about contextual access, understanding where that user is and where they want to go, and having that participating, the SD-WAN solution participating in with other aspects of application delivery is something that Citrix is actively working on. We have the concept of a secure digital workspace and a secure digital perimeter, and understanding where the user is, what applications they're sourcing, and things like that. It's beyond SD-WAN, but Citrix as a whole definitely is well aware of the concept of GDPR and what this means for enterprises, and we have a broader solution set defined that certainly leverages our SD-WAN solution. But in totality, of the secure digital workspace and the secure digital perimeter are designed to help our enterprise customers meet or make changes to be compliant with the new GDPR rules that are in place.
So it's not the solution that you need, but it's all part of that kind of ongoing conversation, because I know GDPR has a lot of people talking about what needs to be done and what can be doing. And as you said, Citrix is right there, because a lot of times you're right there with the end user to a certain extent, because you're right there at the end point where they're entering their information as part of that conversation.
That's correct, yes.
Well, Carl, thank you very much for your time today. We weren't able to get to all of the questions that we had coming in from our audience, but as we kind of come to the top of the hour, I do have a bit of a housekeeping point to make, and Katie always reminds me of this, so I want to make sure I get this in correctly. We do have a survey that I just put up right now at the end of our webinar, and this survey just takes a minute to fill out, might even take you a little bit less. And that gives us just some valuable feedback about what you heard and saw today. It allows us to work with our folks to make these presentations much better, and gives us a lot of valuable feedback into how we can improve these presentations to our audience as we go along. And as folks take a minute to look at that URL, I just wanted to thank Carl Brown again from Citrix for joining us today and giving us this unique tour of SD-WAN and SaaS and how everything works together. So Carl, thank you very much once again for being with us today and giving us your insight. We really do appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And with,
thanks, Scott.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. And with that, I'll mention once again that my name is Scott Ferguson. I'm one of the editors at Enterprise Cloud News, which is produced by Light Reading. Thank you very much for joining our webinar today. And before I leave, I want to thank Kate Dottie, our project manager extraordinaire, who helps me get all of this information out to you in today's presentation. So Katie, thanks very much for your time and efforts. And with that, I'll say a good day to everybody and have a great rest of your Thursday and a wonderful weekend. Thank you very much for joining us today. We do appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Bye.